London's The Independent reports that an insecticide used in genetically modified crops grown extensively in the United States and other parts of the world has leached into the water of the surrounding environment.
A little less than a third of all the corn grown in the entire world is grown in Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois, Indiana, and Minnesota. That productivity is due to the application of humongous quantities of nitrogen fertilizer. All that fertilizer runs off the land, makes it into the Mississippi River, comes down the river, fuels extraordinary population explosions of phytoplankton. The stuff dies, it rots. When something rots, it uses up oxygen. And then anything that is alive, like crabs and little tiny fish, they can't hightail it out of there, they die.
More bad news for those wanting to turn corn into our fuel of the future. Not only is it inefficient, but it's also more costly than gasoline in terms of harm to human health and contributions to climate change.
The bottom line for corn ethanol is that it is a major source of environmental pollution for the little bit of energy that we gain from it.
A new study published in the journal Nature Sustainability has found that farming corn is actually polluting our air at an alarming rate as well. And the U.S. produces more corn than any other crop. By analyzing corn production data and its pollutants at each stage of production, researchers were able to determine that corn-related air pollution from fertilizers, tilling, and pesticides accounts for 4,300 premature deaths every year, citing ammonia from fertilizers as the largest corn-related polluter. And the study's author, Jason Hill, explains that the country's top 5 corn producers, Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska, Minnesota, and Indiana, account for 54% of all corn production-related deaths, which suggests that the closer you are to where the farming takes place, the worse your exposure. Hill estimates that health problems related to air pollution cost Americans $39 billion each year.
Monsanto has pled guilty to illegally spraying and storing banned pesticides on Maui. It comes with a criminal fine in the millions of dollars. Jen Boniza has details.
Monsanto has been one of the largest agricultural contributors in Hawaii since the 1960s. Today, the company pled guilty to illegally spraying Pencap M on their research crops at the Valley Farm facility in Kihei back in 2014. Pencap M contains methylparathion, a pesticide banned by the EPA a year earlier. Court documents say they knew it was prohibited. Monsanto even admitted that they told employees to re-enter the sprayed fields before they were safe. Senator Roz Baker, who represents South and West Maui, says she is horrified at the news.
There are plenty of pesticides on the market that could be used for whatever they need. They didn't need to use products that had been banned. And then to have their workers go back in before the required waiting period is just appalling.
Just walk down the aisle of your grocery store, check out the ingredients on labels, and you'll see the same thing over and over.
High fructose corn syrup is the first ingredient.
It's in pancake syrup, cookies, ketchup, jelly, even cereal and soup.
Tomato soup, high fructose corn syrup.
As the third ingredient after tomato and water. Yep. So there you go. And so people think, oh, tomato, it's a vegetable. I'm giving my child, a vegetable serving.
Each year, Americans consume, on average, almost 38 pounds of high fructose corn syrup. But not Jessica Haney. This mother of 2 and the voice behind a blog called Crunchy Chewy Mama has cut the corn-based sweetener out of her family's diet.
It's not just squeezing out the corn and getting the sugar or something. It's not that you're eating corn. It's not a vegetable. It's a highly industrialized product that has been shown to do lots of yucky things in your body, and we just don't need it.
Many Americans are convinced high fructose corn syrup is one of the culprits of the country's obesity epidemic. In a recent study, 57% of those polled said it was a top food safety issue, right up there with artificial growth hormones in milk and mad cow disease. That concern is reflected in the demand for food that's free of high fructose corn syrup, trying to rebrand it as corn sugar.
I learned whether it's corn sugar or cane sugar, your body can't tell the difference. Sugar is sugar.
In addition to this multi-million-dollar ad campaign, the Corn Refiners Association has petitioned the FDA to use corn sugar on ingredient labels.
High fructose corn syrup is simply a sugar made from corn. It is an added sugar in the diet, and this effort to provide clarity to consumers will help them recognize added sugars in the diet.
Many skeptical consumers, like Jessica Haney, say high fructose corn syrup by another name is still something she won't be feeding her family.
You think to change the name is very misleading?
Oh, yeah, I do. We do molasses and honey and maple syrup, things that all have minerals embedded within them and that come with fiber, whereas the fructose corn syrup doesn't.
But it would take a lot of Jessica Haney's to eat away at that startling statistic. 38 pounds of high fructose corn syrup per American per year. Brianna Keeler, CNN, Arlington, Virginia.
Umutang siya sa tanim. Siyempre pag-harvest, babayad. Ang tira, sako. Hindi pa nakapagtanim, uutang ulit ng kakainin. Pagkato sa pamilya. Pag nagtanim na, tira tanda kag mag-ano?
Kalaunan, naramdaman na lamang nila ang masasamang epekto ng GM corn sa kanilang kalusugan.
Mutat ka lang ka kabrusgon mo. No, sakit lang busong mo sa kabrusgon. No, ay magsakit sa sakit sa tuga ka. Belatian kundi nga kabrusgon tagin sakit na. Sa subong daw hindi man epektibo mga tao magkaon daw ay gid man ikaw at mabatian nga mga may kaso nga nagsakit busong nakakaon kumay sa ang iba nadlok magkaon. Ako man lang tong nagkaon ng ligad bulan nga nagsakit ya. Nag-inubo ko kung sakit dugan ko.
Apektado din ng herbisidyong ini-spray sa RR corn ang lupa at ibang mga pananim. Sa pagkamatay ng mga halamang.
Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's me here, and today I'm back with another anti-capitalism deep dive true crime video topic. Today I want to do the topic of the agricultural pure evil, the agricultural corn grain farming industry files. Deep dive, capitalism, biodiversity loss, pollution, evil Monsanto's, the company, worker labor abuse, food products, high fructose corn syrup health woes and health crisis, car fuel, climate change pollution, etc. So let's get started in this YouTube video. But before we get started, all my YouTube videos that are related to this topic will be either linked down in the description if I have room, but it'll also, if I can't do that, it'll also be on the screen right now if you'd like to check out the other farming-like videos I've made. So let's get started into this YouTube video topic. How the overuse of corn in animal agriculture is devastating our environment. First things first, cows, sheep, goats, etc., horses, etc., they don't eat grain in the wild and will bloat and could die from grain overload. Eating too much grain can cause also laminitis, and also eating too much grain causes slowing of the gut in the animal and livestock animal, dehydration, and often leads to death in livestock animals. Cows evolved as ruminants to digest grass and plants. Eating grain and soy creates environments in their guts where toxic bacteria can grow out of control. Not only this, but during the mad cow disease outbreak, cows were fed cow meat from other infected scrapie sheep and other cows, despite the simple fact that cows naturally in the wild and in natural don't eat meat. It was a very problematic situation that honestly could have been prevented because cows don't eat meat. The E. coli that has killed so many people and has ruined the kidneys of so many more doesn't do well in a doesn't do well in a grass-fed cow. It thrives in a grain-fed gut. From there, the E. coli also gets into our crops, on which cow's manure and poop is spread on the soil. All ecosystems, in order to be healthy and resilient, require biodiversity, but animal agriculture, and especially the huge grain monocrops used to supply the industry, massively decreased the essential diversity, creating land dead zones, the opposite of ocean dead zones. Meadows that once supported countless interdependent wildlife species have been transformed into row upon row of sameness. Native species of plants and animals have been locked out. Descendants of the Maya living in Mexico refer to themselves as the corn people because their 9,000-year reliance on corn as a food staple. But we look like corn chips according to modern scientific analysis of carbon isotopes in the bodies of North Americans. The reason is that while it looks like we're eating a wide variety of foods, corn is actually hiding in most everything we look. Soda pop, ketchup, salad dressing, cookies are commonly made with corn syrup. Ditto for many yogurts, protein bars, soups, and more. Most of all, the reason is that corn is a major component in farmed animal feed. Consider, for example, that depending on how long the cattle are kept on the feedlot, it takes some 8 to 16 pounds of dry corn and soy to produce a single pound of beef. This overuse of corn and soy and grain as a whole is fed crops has been devastating on many levels, on human health, on the environment, and on billions upon billions of innocent farmed animals. A very real danger to humanity. The environmental effects of animal farming are equally troubling, with water pollution being one of the most serious. Corn monocropping especially uses large amounts of fertilizer, much of what runs off into our rivers, lakes, and oceans, where it can cause algae blooms. These algae blooms are short-lived. Once dead, their decomposition consumes essentially all the oxygen in the waters, creating a dead zone again. The wildlife in these waters, the fish, lobsters, and other life in those waters will suffocate from the lack of oxygen. At the mouth of the Mississippi last fall, 5,334 square miles of the Gulf of Mexico was dead because of this. Nearly all modern agriculture is associated also with serious soil loss and soil erosion. Again, animal agriculture is the biggest offender. Much of this loss results from overgrazing, but the majority is once again related to the crops we need to feed farmed animals. We feed most of our corn to farmed animals, and corn is one of the worst contributors to soil erosion and soil loss. Contract labor and custom services. Many corn farms contract with custom service providers for particular field tasks like spraying and harvesting. Large farms also likely to contract with labor providers and lease labor equipment to other capital. On a video in the United Farm Workers Facebook page from 2020, Joe Quinn is hunched over weeding cornfields in Oregon. Jacqueline plucks weeds by hand as he waddles over a row of dirt to protect baby corn plants. The laborer wears long pants, a long shirt, gloves, a safety vest, and a hood. In another video from 2018, corn farm workers in Indiana are wearing garbage bags to protect themselves from morning dew and from getting cut. Farm workers working for contracted labor providers often experience workplace violations, wage theft, and pure abuse, including within the corn farming industry sector. Seed corn companies like Monsanto and Pioneer bring in thousands of migrant workers to the fields each growing season, relying on the corn to produce their proprietary seeds. Farm workers in cornfields are also exposed to pesticides and chemicals that are harmful to human health at a higher rate than other U.S. workers. Applying fertilizer, using gas-turned tractors, kicking up dust while tilling the land, and pesticide production are all major contributors to air pollution from corn farms. This air pollution from growing corn has been linked to 4,300 premature deaths a year in the United States alone. That is, a quarter of the deaths due to agricultural air pollution. Applying pneumonia was a key culprit for air pollution from corn farms. The pollution includes significant sources of greenhouse gas emissions contributing to the climate change capitalism caused crisis. Burning corn in a stove may seem bizarre, but it is no more bizarre than fermenting and distilling it into ethanol to burn in our cars. As gas prices go up, people are looking to ethanol and other biofuels to substitute for oil. Unfortunately, it is a bad bargain, one that is being encouraged by giant agricultural firms like Archer, Daniels, Midland, and Monsanto that reap in huge capitalism profits from corn in taxpayers' wallets. Corn is already America's most heavily subsidized crop, sucking up about $10 billion a year. According to OXFAM, along with all that water and fertilizer, about 13% of the corn crop is now devoted to ethanol production. Back to the high fructose corn syrup topic, it is an industrial product that was perfected in the 1970s and introduced to the world via the food system in the early 1980s. Almost immediately, Americans started putting on the pounds and weight, with an obesity crisis doubling by 2000. HFCS has made headlines for its use in its soda and fruit juice, combined with a large jump in soda consumption by children. It has impacted in childhood obesity and skyrocketing rates of diabetes. HFCS is not a natural product. Corn processors claim it's chemically identical to sugarcane, except for an extra 5% fructose over glucose content. Ordinarily, cane sugar is 50% fructose and 50% glucose, but researchers at the UC Davis and the University of Michigan found fructose turns fat more readily than glucose, and it increases the level of triglycerides into the bloodstream. Monsanto seed corn companies continue to use contractors despite allegations of migrant labor abuses. With morning temperatures approaching nearly 90 degrees, one day in July 2015, a migrant labor worker working rows of corn began to experience symptoms and signs of heat stroke and heat exhaustion, including difficulty breathing and extreme nausea. The laborer was working near Bone, Iowa for an independent contractor with the St. Louis-based Monsanto Corporation, which hires such contractors annually to recruit and oversee teams of migrant farm workers in the cornfields of the Midwest. Each year, seed corn companies like Monsanto bring in thousands of laborers to produce the hybrid seeds, most of which are genetically modified. The companies sell the seeds to the farmers worldwide in what has now become an $11 billion GMO corn industry. A review of federal documents, lawsuits, and Monsanto records, and interviews with advocates and experts shows that the allegations include broken recruiting promises, minimum wage violations, wage theft, improperly withholding pay, and substandard living conditions in seed corn production of Monsanto and Pioneer. As a way to locate workers in emergencies, Monsanto requires its detasseling crews to stay within the rows they are assigned to work in. But that morning, the worker finished his water and needed to get more water. Instead of walking the long way down of his corn row, he crossed over other rows of corn to get water more quickly. After learning about the shortcut, Monsanto's contractor, El Libido Cortez, allegedly fired the worker. The worker could not speak about his experience for the story and requested to stay anonymous to protect his identity and to protect his employment prospects. But an Iowa legal aid attorney, Jessica Taylor, complained to Monsanto's on his behalf. Monsanto is not the only target of labor allegations related to corn dasseling. A review of more than a decade of complaints to legal aid offices, including more than a dozen lawsuits, show labor-related allegations filed against DuPont, Pioneer, and other corn seed companies. Along with these companies, contractors in anticipation tight margins, the company's strict specifications, contractors can now recruit workers by a practice known as bait and switch, said Bill Barndell, a University of Texas at Austin law professor and migrant labor advocate who helped draft the 1983 Federal Agricultural Worker Protection Act. Companies lure workers, hundreds of them, even thousands of miles away, on false promises of the contractors. They use a series of illegal practices that push the risk for unreliability of contractors onto the workers themselves. But by arranging to pay contractors a lump sum amount, usually per acre, the lawyer said Monsanto and Pioneer keep annual wage expenses and liability low and predictable, boons and high volatile weather sensitivity industry. In recent years,